Report from the Chair of the Teachers Academy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's probably not an awful lot to talk about on some of this because it's already been covered elsewhere, which is good. The maternity incentive scheme, Safety Action 4, which I've already mentioned, we did look at it in detail at the People Academy. And I'm just going to highlight one thing that Sarah didn't talk about, which was the audit of all after hours deliveries over a 6-month period, which they did and found really good practice related to communication debriefs and the presence of consultants. But there's a little bit of work required around documenting cases on CERNA, so lots of paper notes, but obviously a desire to move away from that. So we talked about whether that was a mindset or a system issue, and it's a bit of both, but it is being addressed. We did cover off the risks in detail as well. The 3 risks pertinent to the People Academy were covered in Laura's update. But I do just want to draw attention to the risk of nursing and midwifery workforce staffing and the reduction from 20 to 60, because that is pretty significant. And we've been doing an awful lot of work as a trust and as academies around that recruitment process. And I'll come on and talk a little bit more about that as well. But some great progress on that one. We did talk about industrial action. It's completely irrelevant now because we were talking about the fact that everybody was getting around the table, and then since then, obviously, that didn't happen, and we've experienced further strikes. From a dashboard perspective, there was some really good news. Turnover has dropped 10.01% from 10.25 in October. Absence had continued to fall as well, so at the end of November we're sitting at 5.91%, and we did put a stretch target in there at 5.5 for the end of March. However, we did acknowledge the winter pressures and the impact that that could have on absence as well. And we've got the academies coming up the week after next, so it'll be interesting to see what impact that had on absence overall. We talked about the contacts with the advocacy service and a dip in those and more informal resolutions to many of the cases that are brought forward. So lots more informal resolution. Volume of bullying and harassment cases remained stable. There were only 6 reported over the last 6 months. 50% of those resolved informally as well. And just a couple of cases referred for mediation over the last 6 months as well, both with positive outcomes overall. Fahim gave a really great update around the long-term workforce plan, and this has been built around train, retain and reform. Lots of money behind it. As well, and this is around investment funding increase in training places, right up to 27 and 28 to cover the shortfalls that have been reported previously. And we talked about the significant cost of support services for that as well. So Ray brought that up in terms of, we've got to fund getting people through the training as well as the recruitment of these individuals. And some really good news. John sat there as a proud dad when we talked about outstanding pharmacy services. Kate Lavery was joined by Ali and Sophie from the pharmacy team. They shared an update on how the outstanding pharmacy service work streams were progressing. There were 6 of those, 45% of the pharmacy team engaged in those work streams, the biggest of which is wellbeing and culture, covering wellbeing, civility, behaviours, recognition and celebration, inclusion and fairness, and lots of initiatives were shared as well. Increased communication, stay interviews, a big focus on EDI celebrations being developed overall, and a 23% improvement in the engagement temperature checks since February, so this stuff is working. And actually a 79% response rate to the National People Survey, which is phenomenal, and particularly for pharmacy as well. And we've heard a lot of bad press about pharmacy and the issues, so to hear this update was really, really engaging overall. And we did talk about the 55% of people who are not engaged in the work streams and how we were reaching those people. And there was a lot of talk about the leadership and the programme team now working as one, or previously not joined up. We talked about personal development being addressed, and we took a lot of assurance actually around communicating progress and how even if people were not engaged directly in the work streams, they were being engaged in terms of that progress overall. And we didn't get a chance to talk in any detail around the candidate journey for recruitment. And again, it's been a huge focus of this academy overall. They Just have been supporting the team in terms of recruitment. They ran 2 campaigns, signposted people to the open days. One was for St Luke's Day Case Unit, and the other was just general nursing and midwifery. And the campaigns reached 2.2 million people, yielded over 1,100 candidates, registering interest. There were 370 enquiry forms and 59 people appointed, 20 registrants, 39 of them were HC SWs, and we talked a lot about the effectiveness of that campaign across nursing and midwifery as well. A little bit more difficult to track because there are other campaigns running at the same time around that kind of attraction. But actually for the St Luke's Day Case recruitment, it was the only campaign and resulted in 50 to 60 offers, and 38 of those were to people outside of the trust. So fresh blood in there as well. We were overly ambitious on the agenda as normal, and I think that's a continuing theme for board development. I was the only non-exec director present, and I was chairing, which makes it incredibly difficult. But the execs and the other attendees did a great job of challenging and questioning what they were being told as well.
That's good. Thank you for that comprehensive report. Any questions for Karen as a result of that report? No? Obviously covered everything up. Like you say, some of these we've already touched on, haven't we?
Yeah.
As we've gone along. But you know, it certainly sounds, certainly I've heard some of the less than positive stories about the work in pharmacy, and that's, you know, it's really good to see that level of improvement. Sometimes those things take a long time though.
They do.
You know, you've got to sort of take the wins as they come.
Yeah.
And the recruitment campaign seems really positive. You know, that's a good result, isn't it, for the effort that's gone in. So, so well done to those who are sitting behind that work. If there's no further questions on that, we will move on to the Equality and Diversity Council update from Melvin. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with some really good news. I think I may have mentioned it previously in my chief exec last board meeting that the trust has received 2 national awards in recognition of all the work that we're doing in advancing equality, diversity and inclusion. The EDI team, along with representatives from all 3 staff equality networks, attended the Nursing Times Awards, Workforce Awards at the London Metropole Hotel, and won in the category for Best Employer for Diversity and Inclusion, for our excellent work in reviewing, refreshing and relaunching our staff equality networks and ensuring that we are thriving in that particular area. Our Spark team also won, which coveted the Health Service Journal Workforce Wellbeing Award for their innovative work on Ramadan Allies, a project which people will be familiar with, supports our Muslim staff to undertake their prayer during Ramadan and to continue to focus on delivering services. This particular sort of step change in our previous approach, which was start small, Ramadan packs, now we're moving to Ramadan Allies. This coming Eid, I'm told to expect even bigger and better, so I shall very much look forward to seeing what the team have got planned for that. And we were also finalists for a Nursing Time Workforce Award for the Spark app, which is available for staff and colleagues and features all major worldwide faiths in multiple languages. That helps for guidance in that particular area. There are updates there from all of our staff networks, both in terms of what they have been doing and what they are currently focusing on. I won't go through those, but what I will point out actually, because we were really kind of impressed by the step change in the number of membership for our resin network, what was the Race Equality and now Race Equality Staff Inclusion Network. I was reminded and reflected in that meeting on the time when I first came into the trust, and I think we're about 12 or 13 members in that network, and now we've got 224, which is phenomenal. Actually, really, really positive, and a very, very active workforce. And also, I would commend Raquel, in her chair role, yet again did a stunning presentation, really impressive of the work that she's doing. And then I think that is kind of interim at the moment, but I really hope that Raquel thinks about taking on that role on a permanent basis. Some more work on the equality diversity strategy objective around briefing for managers. How do we equip our managers to be more open and more supportive in recognising the diversity of needs amongst those whom they lead? So we piloted something which has now been rolled out and is proving to be very successful, a half-day face-to-face training course for line managers to support them being proactive in the space of EDI. We had an update on Reach In and Reach Out. And we also invited colleague Alexander Hayden from the Health and Care Partnership to talk about Root Out Racism, which was an initiated programme of work, not a programme of work, an initiated movement from West Yorkshire Health and Care Partnership about 2 years ago, I think. And I think you were still in post at the CCG when we all were in St Stephen's Square and we all signed up to pledge our support for this. As the place lead, sort of 2 years on, I was minded to ask ourselves, what have we achieved under that banner? What are we trying to achieve, and how more targeted and purposeful could we be in that space? And I think it's a challenge for all across the healthcare partnerships, including ourselves. So we wanted to, I tasked Alexander with leading on how we could revitalise that whole approach. Some of that with us, and invited members of the council to get more involved in some of that work. And then we also heard about the other aspect of our work in this space, which is not about our colleagues, but about the people that we serve. So we heard from Vishal Sharma about the great work that he and colleagues are leading in taking services, making them more accessible, hunting out those yet to reach groups who could benefit from early intervention to prevent the development of coronary heart disease. And there's a lot of positive offers of support to how we might take that work forward from those in the meeting. Happy to take any questions. And the final point, under the business, which is relative, because we're into sort of appraisal, you mentioned it, Helen, appraisal time of the year. As the Equality Diversity Standards for 2022 review, which is currently underway and will go through the People Academy, we will be looking to include, where it hasn't already been, an evaluation of each of the directors' contributions to the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion agenda. Now, we started this actually a couple of years ago, so we'd already achieved that standard, but it's interesting that the place lead, as well as the Chief Executive and Trust, I've had to articulate my commitment to Rob Webster as the Chief Executive of West Yorkshire, and similarly, we will expect that to kind of be a thread that runs through all the appraisals across the leaders in the Trust.
Okay, thank you very much. Really helpful. Lots of really good stuff in there. And, you know, I think nothing like some awards to give people a bit of, you know, a bit of that sort of confidence, I guess, that the things are doing are the right things. Saj?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Now, I was just wondering if we wanted to highlight to the board the Pause for Peace initiative that our Sparks team are undertaking on a Tuesday at 12:30. Given world events at the moment, and obviously how impacted our colleagues at work might be, giving a safe space for people to come together and have open and honest conversations. And I think that is we're probably one of the very few, if perhaps the first organisation that's really embraced that in terms of being so open, so public about inviting our staff to be able to come have a space for reflection, but also to have what can be really difficult conversations. So we just flag that up, because that's been running for about 3 or 4 weeks now, isn't it, Karen?
I think it's longer, I think it's a bit longer, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We'll make sure we get that noted as well. So thank you for raising that. Any other questions for Mel on the Culture and Diversity Council update? No? I hope my desire to keep on time is stifling your questions.
It's not a question actually, it's just something to link up. So we have for our medical students, which are also your medical students, something called Ramadan Leave that we've run for the past 3 years. It will be now, and the importance for medical students to have clinicians who are trying to balance their faith needs and their clinical needs, and whether there's any linking potentially that we can do. So that was just
Yeah.
Good idea. Thank you very much. Okay, if we're all right, we'll move on then. So we're now moving on to the Finance and Performance Academy, and obviously under section 14, we've got the supporting reports that go with that. So draw in and out of them as you see fit, I guess, as you go through. I had asked for these to be specifically on the agenda. I thought it was unusual not to be on the agenda when I chaired my first meeting. So apologies if that's like fed you all with, ooh, what's that about? I think it's just so highlighted so that we leave this room knowing exactly where we are, what we're achieving, where we're struggling, in every aspect. But I think this bit was missing last time, so please draw in and out of those reports, and then we'll do a bit of a roundup at the end. Is there anything else we need to cover?
So if it's okay, Helen, I'm going to do a little bit on the report, and then I'm going to pass to Matthew, because I think we do need to understand the latest financial position. And I had a conversation with Matthew before the meeting this morning. I said I wouldn't say anything and I'd give him all the time, but I've changed my mind on that now, Matthew. So the rest about finance stays there. Matthew will update as we met in November. Obviously, we're now sat here in January. There's more to update on. I think important to say, we talked about in Academy the cash position. We don't often mention cash, but at the end of the day, it's the cash that pays people's wages. And we are starting to see the impact of the financial position on cash. So I think it's important to note that and understand that. When we look at performance, we talked lots through the meeting again, and Mel had lots in her report about the impact on the strikes. It's fair to say our performance is strong and remains strong, especially against our West Yorkshire peers. And I know we've already said it in the meeting, but a huge shout out on the urgent care stuff. I've worked in the Bradford system for a number of years, and it's always been a challenge as urgent care, and the results are fantastic. So important, we talked about in the Academy, important we note them here. I just want to note about the work we looked at on the operational improvement plan. So we see those improvements in performance. I think what's really important in the Academy is we look at the work that has led to those improvements. So we look at referral to treatment, urgent care and cancer across the 3 programme areas, and each meeting focuses on one of the areas. And, it's those sustained improvements that are making the difference in performance. The workshops on the operational improvement plan have noted an ambition, and I think we need to note it as board, to be in the top decile of performance by March 2025 for all constitutional targets. So great ambition. We need to track progress on that through the Academy. If it's okay now, I am going to pass to Matthew to tell us a bit more about finance that's moved on since November.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So the paper that's presented highlights the position at month 8, but just mindful that we didn't have a Finance and Performance Academy in December. So just in terms of month 9, the latest numbers we have are suggesting that month 9 was slightly better than we had forecast, which gives us a slightly better underlying run rate than we had previously forecast. So we had originally forecast we would be around about £14 million in deficit by the end of month 9, offset by technical and non-recurrent opportunities to get us back to break even. We're probably about £600,000 better than that. But overall, we still we're still forecasting a break-even position, albeit through the rapid improvement work that happened in November time, we did submit a deficit of around about 1.1 million. We are working with the ICS around how we address that. And if you've just been mindful as well of the overall system gap at an ICS level, when we take into account the distribution of the 800 million that was highlighted nationally, and then a number of other offsets, as I said, in ICS there's still a £10 million gap, so a lot of work going on about how we might address that in Mel's report. You'll note that the allocation towards the Bradford Place is around about £5 million. But what we are doing internally is looking to continue to look at opportunities to improve our underlying run rate, particularly addressing what the exit run rate will look like going into 24-25, but seeking out opportunities, particularly with Saj and I working together, to think about how do we get ahead of the game and catch up on some of the activity that we've lost through industrial action. So over the last month, given our slightly improved numbers, we've been looking at where can we invest non-recurrently in extra capacity, and I'm sure Saj can pick that up because we have seen opportunities and we've agreed that we will explore those opportunities. We continue to work on how do we improve our internal financial control, and the paper alludes to the financial escalation meetings that are now in place. We've been through one round of those. Would have hoped a little bit more to come out of them, perhaps we need to get into a bit more of a rhythm to see what we can extract and what benefits we can extract from those meetings. At place and system level, a lot of work going on around how do we work together collaboratively to get us over the line. One piece of work that we are doing is reviewing each of our balance sheets, peer review of balance sheets, to say is there anything we can extract? Are we addressing accruals or provisions in a consistent basis across the system, and is there anything we could do to explore addressing the £10 million gap? So that's where we currently are. The waste reduction programme work streams are continuing. We aren't seeing much of an output as of yet. Some of them are addressing particularly big, challenging issues. Junior doctor rostering, looking at some of our consultant activities, and are we clear on what we are delivering for those activities? We've got some nurse rostering work underway. And actually, when you look at the agency report that's in the paper, you'll note that there's zero HCA agency now going through. We're running at an average of £50,000 a month in the first 6 months. That's zero now, so that's a really good output. Similar within the states and facilities, the average was about £250,000 a month on agency. That's now down to £200,000 a month, so £50,000 improvement. So there are some improvements in the run rate being noted, but you know, we are in such a difficult period at the moment, winter, that it probably just been lost in some of the other things that are coming through. And we've also alluded to already this morning to the maternity incentive scheme. That will now release £700,000 towards our waste reduction plan as well. So some good stuff going on. Julie has highlighted the cash risk. It's probably reasonable of me to just highlight the capital risk as well. So we had a £59 million programme this year, which is huge compared to previous years. We've got £40 million to spend in Q4 this year. We are forecasting we will be there or thereabouts, and we're moving schemes between years to get us somewhere near that target. But I just need to highlight that the risk is escalating a little bit around delivery of that programme. And then, as Mel mentioned earlier, we're deep into the planning rounds for 24-25 and looking at what opportunities we have as an organisation moving into next year, noting that there will be no non-recurrent or technical adjustments we can apply because we're deploying them all this year. And one debate we will need to have as an executive team is, given the operational pressures that colleagues are facing, do we have the capacity, capability or resource to really take forward some of the transformation opportunities or change opportunities that we might need to employ, particularly when you look at model health, GIRF, as Saj has already alluded to, some of the PLIX information, all signposting where opportunities might exist, but he's engaging with the teams, getting them on board and putting the right support in place to allow us to extract opportunity. And that will be a challenge, but that's probably the way we're going to have to go this year. So I'm happy to take any questions, but that's just a quick snapshot of where we are.
So Julie, do you want to just add something?
No, I just wanted to ask a question actually.
Okay, so we'll open the questions on the finance bit and then we'll go on to the performance bit. So Julie and then Sanj.
So peer review of balance sheets, I think for people around the table, not non-finance people, that's a big step change in system working, isn't it? Because that's almost like opening your cupboards for somebody to see in.
Yeah.
How is that going?
It's good. So it's been run through the deputy directors group, chaired by two of the finance directors, one from mental health and one from an acute trust. And it's really just testing the methodologies about, so for example, each year we include a provision in our accounts for untaken annual leave on the assumption that it will take in the new year and we will backfill it either with premium rate activity or agency. And it's clear that there are different methodologies in how that accrual is quantified, different approaches. So some of that is just testing the validity of our approaches and have we got it right across the system. And then you can do a proportionate analysis in terms of the scale of the accruals you've got on your balance sheet compared to others, and does right for the size of your organisation. But it is very much an open and transparent process. We wouldn't have done this a couple of years ago. It is a very different approach. And Brian's team at Leeds Community will be involved in that process as well. So
Okay,
yeah.
okay. And just a comment, it will be exciting to hear the Director of Strategy's view on how they can support some of the work you talked about. So in some senses, what are their views about doing some of this and how might they go about it with our workforce? So it'll be exciting to hear that when they're in place. When they're here.
One thing I probably just should have mentioned as well is John's kindly chairing a group at the moment to impact assess the waste reduction programmes that we currently have in place, but also to look at opportunities, what is the art of the possible beyond some of the information that we've got. So John Bond's that kind of chairing that group at the moment.
Thank you. Sanj?
Thanks, Helen. Just to add on the point that Matthew raised around looking at what we can do to get ahead of the game in this financial year. And if I just quickly quantify for you the impact from December and January strikes alone, and just to call out a few numbers. So 1,464 outpatients cancelled, 51 cancer patients cancelled, 71 inpatients, 96 day cases. And the important thing to remember there is it's not just 1,464 appointments, that's the cancelled appointments. You need to then find 1,464 appointments to put these patients into as well, quite rightly. So the impact is actually double. And for the December strike, because we had advance notice, we knew that we were going to have to cancel, so actually the fill rate was much lower. So in reality, the direct impact is much bigger. What we are doing though is we've got a very good assessment of where we know our challenges lie. So I've called out, for instance, trauma and orthopedic, I've called out ENT and some general surgical areas. With Matthew and his team support, we're working very closely within this next 8 weeks or so of this financial year to get some quick work done with the independent sector around what additional support we could gain in order to get some of our long wait patients seen. The other thing to highlight is because we are in a good position in terms of across the board from a performance point of view, we are also offering mutual aid support. So for example, a couple of weeks ago, I was having a discussion with Sheffield to help with their radical prostatectomy, where they've come to us to seek mutual aid support in terms of progressing patient pathways as well. So wherever we possibly can, because of the position we've got ourselves into, is to provide that mutual aid support to other providers as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Barry, then Karen?
A couple of points. I can't remember whether it was in a board or an FMP academy meeting or two, but I think, Matthew, you reported the result of some research which was suggesting that productivity within the trust was reducing, but headcount was increasing, which doesn't sound like a very good place to be. Where are we now in understanding those findings and taking any actions, any opportunities for improvement to rebalance that position?
Yeah, so that originally stemmed from the national piece of work, looking at those two metrics, and we dove down into a number of specialties to say, what does that mean to us as an organisation? And probably fair, probably switch to Saj to say, for example, gastro, it might be worth highlighting the work that we've done with gastro to absolutely recognise that shift in workforce, not the dip in productivity, but what we've done since.
Yeah, so just to give you the, we had a paper around gastro at PTM where we looking at the changes there. So you look at endoscopy, for instance, we were heavily reliant on insourcing, and we were heavily reliant on outsourcing. We have 12 gastroenterology consultants, and for about 4 years, we've never been, or 5 years, we've never been in a position where we've been fully appointed from a consultant point of view. Thankfully, we are now, because we've got 3 or 4 individuals who've joined us. That plus productivity work we've been doing has meant that we've now not only switched off all of the insourcing work we were doing, with the combination of the community diagnostic centre that's come on board, we've switched off the outsourcing work that we've been doing, and we're able to deliver those lists internally. Straight away, what that's going to do in terms of productivity, it's going to switch very quickly the amount of money we were spending on outsourcing and insourcing to a much more sustainable model. And just last week, another example, in fact, was it this week, in fact, Monday of this week, we were recruiting to general surgical posts, and we got a proposal to ETM, and ETM support this. We know that we've got colleagues that are coming up for retirement. We had a really good field of general surgical consultants coming through, and we signed off at ETM the option of a 12-month locum as well as the substantive to forward plan. And I think the more you can get into that realm and way of working, the better it is in terms of productivity and levelling out the peaks and troughs. So I'm hoping initiatives like that will demonstrate that actually our cost versus delivery of activity and productivity is improving because of initiatives of that nature.
Yeah, just to come back on that as well. In terms of the gastro throughput, we measure productivity on what we call points per list, and the GERF recommended number of points per list, I believe, is 11. We're now back at 11. We were down 8 and 9 previously, so we're now in a much better position. And the investments we're making from a capital perspective, such as the day case unit, the plastic hand unit, is helping us reconfigure how we deliver our theatre lists, and having a dedicated day case unit will give us much better opportunity to improve our throughput, and we are targeting GERF recommended levels of throughput through that new unit, as opposed to having a mixed economy of lists at the moment where we do inpatient and day cases, and so we've got, with a real opportunity to improve our productivity.
In view of this interlink between reduced productivity and increased headcount, have we identified any opportunity or need to strengthen our decision process in looking to recruit additional staff?
Yes. So it relates to the how we use GERF.
Yeah.
So the discipline that we are looking to establish, and this organisation historically has not embraced GERF in the way that a number of other organisations have, as it's sort of using it to inform decision making. But one of the things that we will now be asking is when there is a proposal for a business case for another consultant or another something else, we'll say, well, what does GERF say? What does that GERF say in relation to the work, the activity that we should be doing relative to the number of people we currently employ? And does that indicate there is a need therefore for additional investment? The other element to that is the numbers of people and the headcount is one element. What those people are doing, what their job plans are, and how they spend their time is another. So, interestingly, there was an article yesterday published from the Nuffield Centre, C.S. Stein, who's the Chief Executive of Nuffield, formerly from the Community Trust. wrote a big piece on this very issue. I thought it was really interesting that you raised it, Mary, this productivity conundrum. And the fact that actually it's multifactorial. It's post-COVID, it's working patterns, it's lifetime retirements, it's work-life balance, it's all of these things playing into how do we get arguably the country back on its feet, but also the NHS as part of the country back on its feet and working in the way that it was pre-pandemic. And that, you know, I'm sure all of us are experiencing every facet of our life. Things aren't how they were before we went through this traumatic, as a country, as a world, global experience of the pandemic, and it's taking time.
So in the face of this increased headcount versus productivity,
Yeah,
are we taking the opportunity, perhaps people retiring or people volunteering to move on to another role, to say, do we need to replace that person? No disrespect to them in the role that they've undertaken, but does it create an opportunity to do things a different way
it does,
and save some money?
it does, absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
And to reduce the cost of the individuals that we employ.
Mhm.
So if we've got consultants who are, we are paying extra because they've changed their job plan to incorporate things that cost us more, we're asking the question, can we afford that?
It sounds like there's a degree of scrutiny goes into there, that I think ensures that we're addressing these points. I'm gonna,
One other thing.
okay, I've got a couple of people I think also want to respond to you. I'm assuming John and Paul want to respond to you as well. Karen's got a question. So is your one thing the same thing?
No, it's,
All right, well, I'll let them come back
Yeah,
and
okay.
respond to you, and then we'll come back to your other.
Me?
Well, Paul, I think Paul and then John, if I'm being polite, doing it.
The other book. No, Barry, it was just to sort of, and for the board more generally, to be confident that we continue to innovate. So in the context of, is there radiology-based efficiencies that the application of artificial intelligence might improve both the diagnostic certainty of that and productivity? We're looking to, across West Yorkshire, pilot various applications that do that. The board at the AGM saw the Virtual Royal Infirmary programme, and therefore the challenge to say, can we deliver more care closer to home, and can we look at patient-initiated follow-up contact with us that means that capacity can be potentially reallocated somewhere differently in the job plan or to a different set of patients. So it's this delightful tension creatively the whole time about performance, finance, innovation, and I guess IQ and Fahim as well about that innovation incorporating roles, workforce, the dimension that you've been pushing at, which is how we had historically, if you like, got into an assumption, and maybe this is what John's doing, where there's a certain set of skills that are unique to a particular high-banded, high-graded role. Are we breaking those roles down and looking at innovative ways to distribute that responsibility? All of these things go on in concert.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a point. When you were asking about the scrutiny, certainly there is increased scrutiny. We now have a process whereby if departments want to put forward a case for appointment of a new consultant, for example, as one of our more expensive resources, they have to demonstrate that everyone in that department has been actively job planned so that they can describe the need and that they've looked at their current workforce and cannot quite approach that. So it's, you might ask, we probably should have been doing it for a long time now, but it's something that's built into the process. So.
Thank you. And then you have question number 2. So I'll let you do it, and then I'll.
Going back
then
to.
I'll Karen and Fahim.
All right, going back to Matthew's comments about the non-recurrent savings tank. We've talked about it every year that I've been here. Is the tank empty now? And the answer has been, well, maybe, but you've managed to pull rabbits out of hats, and we've achieved things. I think there's a strong message coming out I'm receiving now that the tank is well and truly empty.
The warrant has been deserted.
Yeah. I don't wish to teach anyone to suck eggs, but in other roles in my past, where I've seen that happen, there's tended to be an underestimation of the cultural change that needs to happen. It isn't just the operational or transactional things. It's a different collective mindset that needs to come to play. You know, we've been asking people to identify recurrent savings in the past. Perhaps the culture was, well, we'll try, but at the end of the day, Matthew will pull a rabbit out. Getting the message around, that isn't it anymore. You know, we're looking at something pretty dire in the face here if we don't respond to it.
I would completely agree, and interestingly, that's part of the discussion we had on Monday.
Yeah.
The execs, how do we change that mindset in the organisation? And clearly we'll discuss that when we come together as execs and share on good practice elsewhere. So Mel's already set me the task to say what's working really well elsewhere in terms of clinical engagement and buy-in to this working differently, and actually acknowledging and taking ownership of the challenge that we face going into next year.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
It is a very good point. It's something I noticed just in my very short time here compared to my good ways. Was it on this point, Julie?
It was, yes. We talk about it a lot in the academy, and actually having some different people around the table, sometimes check their view out from the nursing teams about how does this feel. It was really pleasing to see the waste reduction group is going to be chaired by John, so chaired by a clinician, and I think that's a good start because it's not the finance group job, it's the organisation.
Sorry, Joe, just on it's one aspect of the waste reduction group where we're impact assessing.
Yeah, but good.
Yeah. Although I think it's a great idea.
I think it's your idea.
Right, I'm going to move on to the other questions that we've got to carry on.
And would improve productivity, John, if you just have more to what you do. I've just got a point back to Barry actually, and then an observation and some feedback. I think it's really hard to measure productivity because we are asking people to work in different ways. We're innovating, we're doing new things. There's lots more challenges. And caution over how we measure productivity, but look at performance. So that's a really good place to see how productive we are with patients, for example. And we're embedding kindness. So some things take longer than they used to because we're really focused on the patient experience, which is a good thing. My other point was, so take the waste reduction programme. There is a point for me, and I harp on about this like a broken record at F&P around communication. So how do we tell people that these are the challenges in performance and in finance in a motivating way, an inspiring way that says you can make a difference, every penny counts, you can contribute to this? Because when I look at slide 5 and it's got the waste reduction programme summary on it, it's brilliant. It's not a lot of cash. It's brilliant because what that's telling me is people are pulling together to make a real difference to the cost challenge that you've got. So we've got some really good news to share about performance because people are pulling out all the stops. We've got some really good news to share on actually you can help close that gap. And I'll probably slides the draft, I'll send them. But there is a different cultural way of thinking about this for people. And you can position the challenge different to, well, we've got a financial challenge that would really make a difference, and then pull in those ideas. And sometimes someone outside of finance is good to pick up these things. I'm not saying that's you, John, but somebody who's not directly involved in the numbers is looking at ideas and nothing's too much trouble. And there may be a little bit of resource needed to help pull some of those things out and work on them because, as Barry's point around productivity, it's hard to ask people to do more. So I think I've got some ideas, I'll share them, but I do think we need to communicate the challenges in an inspiring way that says you can really make a difference here. Every penny counts, and willing to get it.
Thank you. Last point, Dean, and then we'll wrap this bit up and move on to things out of the form.
So I just wanted to, in terms of Barry's point around actually how do we move away from putting the rabbit out there at the last minute and that being Matthew's department's role. So we are starting to actually join up what we've been doing and actually translating that into what it means from a money perspective. So there's a lot of international recruitment around nurses, and we're now at the other end. We've got a lot of those colleagues in place, they've gone through their induction, early stage of induction, etc. So they're embedded. and we're turning off things like agency, and you'll see the HCA stuff is turned off. We've done a very similar exercise around agency nursing sort of thing rates, etc. Because we are seeing the fruits of what we've actually been investing in and working on. So we are trying to make sure that actually the two are joined up. So the work that's actually been input into then producing something at the other end. So it's not just an isolation.
Okay, so how refreshing that the conversation that starts off about finance and deficits ends up being one about culture and OD mindset, isn't it? And I guess there's obviously people have ideas and suggestions, there's work going on through the waste reduction route, but there's something bigger than that, I think, about sort of maybe a bit of a cultural change that I guess I would invite the execs to take that all away and just consider in terms of the approach that we need to take, and then no doubt through the academies, you'll see that sort of approach start to come through if you'll take that invitation, I guess, as an exec to.
I've got a choice, Alan.
No, I know. And I guess, but, you know, this, I suppose what comes from here is sort of saying, you know, this needs some sophisticated thought. It's not just something that you say, oh, well, we'll have a bit of a campaign about reducing. I think what we're getting from the board is there's a sophisticated piece here. There's something about communications, there's something about strategy, there's something about, you know, how we embed it within our values and the way we're working. And I think, I think, you know, I guess it's in that context I would invite the exec to take it.
Sorry, I just want
Do you really need to?
sort of
Go
one,
on.
just to reassure that we, you know, I've 3 years in this organisation.
Yeah.
My view was that the restructuring of the CSUs and the embedded Thrive programme have meant that our cultural basis for that sort of challenge and our organisational shape for that sort of challenge is very different from where it might have been. So we're just confident that we'll be making really strong progress in the foundation.
I guess what we hear though back from Matthew and sort of endorsed a bit by Barry is that, yeah, but we've never really had to do it because he's always managed to pull it back. And so people get very bit desensitized to that.
Is the mother of
it is, yeah. So people do, you know, they, but, oh, it always pulls it off at the end. So I do think there's a shift here, isn't there? There's, you know, there's a shift. And so that shift needs to sort of be paid attention to, I guess, so that we don't get cynics. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the performance report. Just ask Sam to pull out any highlights, and then I'm going to come back to the integrated performance, the integrated dashboard. If there's anything anybody's missed that Mel needs to highlight to people, we're doing it in that order in case you're wondering where I'm going on this agenda. It makes sense to me.
So just to quickly pick up, I suppose the point that Julie made was our focusing on the workshop we held recently, the feedback we gave to Finance and Performance Academy around the operational improvement plan that we've got behind and the aspiration that we've got to be top. So the initial aspiration will be top quartile. In some instances, and we've already referenced urgent emergency care, we're there. So we're pushing it one step further to be top decile. And you ask yourself the question as well, to what end, why? And the why is delivering operational excellence. Why? Because that gets us to delivering our vision of outstanding services. And I think it's that connection with the organisation around why is it important that we see patients through A&E as quickly as we possibly can, or patients on RTT pathways, or patients through their cancer or diagnostic pathway, and creating that connection and that culture in the organisation of aspiring to be top decile really gets us focused in that. And I think now that we're starting to put our money where our mouth is in terms of doing the right thing, in terms of the capital investments that we've talked about, people are actually starting to see, well, hang on, this organisation is delivering what it said it was going to deliver, and it's, from a clinical perspective, people are buying the fact that actually, if we said we needed this clinical team in play, we can see that that clinical team is coming into play, and therefore that's leading to better care for our patients. So I think that's been a real key driver of performance rather than the talk about, well, what does that mean in terms of a tick against a standard. So that way of working, what we're seeing when we look at our ambulance handover, urgent emergency care position, a very strong position and an improving position. We have picked up on all of the things that came out as part of the winter plan and the directive that came from the national team around ambulance handover delays. We've improved on that. We worked with Yaz around having halos, hospital liaison officers in place. We increased this in the states work, increasing capacity within the handover zone so that we can allow ambulances back out onto the road, which has been positive for us. The A&E performance, as we've mentioned before, has been improving, and now actually we consistently rank in one of the best performances in the country there, and that's been largely due to a number of factors, including streaming at the front door, minor injuries, GP services, the SDEC areas that we've got now allowing patients to receive their observations, but importantly to try and turn those patients around at the front door, avoiding admission and pressure onto the hospital bed. Opening the wards that we said we were going to open as part of our winter plan, not only to avoid the outliers, but to improve the performance on metrics such as stroke and the SNAP data, because we have opened as part of our plan, which was Ward 9, to increase our bed base for stroke patients. That has a direct benefit to urgent emergency care as well, because actually it means that patients are flowing through into the stroke unit quickly, but it also means that the 4-hour standard is being delivered as well as now some of the SNAP data. You won't see that in the report at this moment in time because the SNAP data is at least 2 months behind the reporting, but I can say that we have got Ward 9 open. So that's urgent emergency care. Mel's highlighted already that we've found that the benefit of having consultants on, and this has been the positive, the silver lining of the cloud in terms of having consultants at front door has allowed us to see patients quicker and turn patients around. So one of the things I'll be thinking about for next year is hopefully the strikes will be resolved, fingers crossed by then, but what's our winter response based on the learning we've had from the strikes and what do we do differently next year for winter. There's lots of good organisations up and down the country that are currently in Opal for the pressure they're experiencing and the increasing. We're not experiencing that. It's not that our patients are any different, it's our operational response has been very different, so it feels very different in the organisation. In terms of referral to treatment, we're not complying with the RTT standard. We were at 66.59%, but we do remain positive on that one in comparison to the other organisation. Our focus has been very much so on priority order of patients, so seeing the most clinically urgent patients first, but then importantly looking in chronological order. So I'm pleased to report we haven't got 104 weekers, we've got no 78 weekers other than the odd patient that we tip over into 78 weeks, but we're literally single digit figures on that. We are moving down towards 0.65 weekers by the end of March of this year, and we are in a relatively good position for the overall waiting list side we have for our 52-week wait position, and we're focusing on that as an aspiration for next year. So RTT, we're building some real confidence there in terms of the work we're doing, and the focus being on productivity next year and trying to reduce our reliance upon outsourcing and insourcing. So that's going to be a significant challenge for us as an organisation because we just don't have the financial headroom to be able to pay for that. In terms of diagnostics and cancer, our 2-week wait and our faster diagnosis standard is very strong. Our 62-day backlog, we're currently at 52 patients who are 62 days, and we've got a trajectory to bring that down to no more than 42 patients. We're on track But largely our challenge there is one related to histopathology. And again, there's work being done with our histopathology team. We've got a histo improvement program to try and speed up those pathways. And then lastly, the only thing I'd highlight is the diagnostic waiting time pressure. This is an area where we haven't been able to get into top quartile. In fact, we went backwards on this. But what's pleasing is that the £5.6 million investment that we've managed to put forward when we were able to do in terms of the regional bidding process is now largely complete. So at the end of this month, we are expecting formal handover of the CDC at Ecclesfield, which is brilliant news for us. £5.6 million investment, the full elements of diagnostic pathways from Ecclesfield, giving us some additional capacity there. Not only will that help us against the DMO1 standard, but will actually help us in terms of our RTT and importantly our cancer pathways as well. So I think that's the high level position on that. Obviously, there's a lot of detail in that.
That's great, thank you. Thanks for pulling those things out. So in terms of questions, I've got Karen, then Barry.
It's more of a comment and some feedback actually. I think what you've highlighted is why is important. So getting people engaged because they understand why it's important in terms of performance. And I just want to congratulate you on the work that's done through the Finance and Performance Academy, Saju and the team, and Matthew, because what we see is the day-to-day, the operational stuff, the tactical and the strategic. So the way that it's all laid out is incredibly clear on what's going on where and why, and then how we're making the change to improve performance overall. And I will always come back to the golden patient. And when you engage with your people at ground level on why it's important, they come up with those kind of initiatives. So the golden patient is if you can get your first patient in surgery in the theatre as quickly as possible, it sets you up for a really good day. So it was one of the initiatives through the Outstanding Theatre Service initiative, but it's that kind of thing that works, and it's just great to see, and the step-by-step improvement to get us to where we are today. So it's just a huge congratulations from me.
Okay, thank you. Barry?
My question is with regard to stroke unit and SNAP. Good news about expanding the capacity within the stroke unit itself. I just wonder, do we have a plan of action and deadlines that set out where we want to get stroke performance to at the end of the day? What will we regard as done deal? We've got to where we want to be, balancing expenditure on stroke treatment against other competing demands within the hospital. Where do we want to get to in terms of stroke?
Yeah. So I think we've had a presentation actually at ETM. It was last Monday, wasn't it, from Ray? In fact, where Ray's done a real deep dive for us. The honest answer with that one is we want to get to an A actually on the SNAP standard, because there's nothing in the SNAP standard that we wouldn't agree with. So the Sentinel Stroke Audit is actually absolutely correct in terms of the aspirations it sets for a stroke patient. Where are we? Well, we're flagging up as an E on thrombolysis and the specialist assessment areas. And that's the area of focus. And I think if we can get the structural elements right, and the structural elements being things like the ward and the basic capacity, that's when I think the clinical team start to say, well, we stand a chance now because we can do something about it. So the aspiration absolutely is an A, because of why wouldn't it be? And we know there are units in Y that are achieving consistently an A, if not an A, they're achieving a B. We've got elements within the 10 SNAP areas where we're at an A or a B, but we've certainly got some areas where we're at C, D's and E's that bring us down a bit. So I know Ray's taken a microscope to this, and we are working through that.
So do we have a deadline, a target, an aspiration as to when we'll get there?
I mean, from my perspective, as soon as possible, but I don't want to set a real deadline in the absence.
As soon as possible could be a long way off.
John will give it to him.
Yeah.
He says, oh, I signed you up for this.
Yeah, John.
Yeah. I was under instructions not to. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can give you a date. I do think Saj is right in the sense that we, I guess when we get to a B consistently, we can have a decision about whether the investment to get to an A is more important than other investments we can make, but we're not at a B yet.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can take our foot off the pedal. Deadline, I'd have to get back to you on.
Are you satisfied that we're making as much progress as we should?
Well, I'll let, go on now.
It's a fair challenge.
Yeah.
And I think it would be helpful for us to bring something back to the board in 6 months that answers that question. Because I think by then we should have a good feel for the impact that Ward 9 has had on, thinking off the top of my head, at least 3 of the metrics that we are underperforming against. And as Saj says, some we're excelling on, we're above 100% on some elements, but the sticking point has been the kind of flow through, which is essentially, have we got enough beds to cope with the number of patients who are having strokes and stroke symptoms? So let's bring that back in more detail and ask Ray to present on that.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And make sure we send it to Barry when it becomes a B. Because he's been championing it, haven't you, Barry? So you do need to see it, don't you?
I think so, yeah. I'll look at the public papers.
So, the final bit of this was I was going to then turn to Mel and just say, in terms of the integrated dashboard, so it sort of covers everything, doesn't it? Whether there's anything specific you want to pull out the board today around the integrated dashboard that you want to just highlight for us, whether it's things that are progressing really well, things that are struggling, that we need to know.
Well, I would probably a couple of things. So I think in the round, we can see from a performance point of view, we're kind of holding our own, and there aren't any significant areas of performance that we are not acknowledging and working really hard to resolve. I think the issue, our biggest concern right now is the forward plan for our financial plans for 24-25 and indeed for probably the year after that. So that is work in progress. I think in terms of some of the metrics that haven't been touched on in the integrated performance report in a lot of detail is you will see the number of patients staying longer in our hospitals has increased consistently, and that's one that is of concern in relation to the impact that the local authority financial position may have on the provision of intermediate care. And in that regard, we're doing a fully integrated piece of work in our place with local authority colleagues to define the model, the right size model of intermediate care in all its manifestations, whether that's bedded, a home first option, or even a virtual hospital option for patients either trying to avoid admission to hospital or to get out sooner. So that's very real, very live, and it's been talked about by the Healthcare Partnership. The other area that's really quite notable and probably attributed to our success in international recruitment is the number of colleagues who are from non-white British backgrounds. So as a proportion of our population, it's actually exceeding that in 40+%. What you're not seeing and what we're not seeing and we're concentrating on is a corresponding accelerated rate of increase in the representation at most senior levels within the organisation. So we are minded to pay more attention to ensuring that we are developing a pipeline of individuals at all grades, you know, that starts from band 7 onwards into more senior leadership posts. With the best will in the world, I think, you know, if you take our 3 appointments, for example, none of those appointees are from a their background. And when we are really targeting our recruitment, we are finding that those candidates are not coming forward. And so what we need to do is say, why is that? If people aren't coming forward from those backgrounds for director level posts, it's because they're not there in deputy director level posts. And if they're not there, then we need to move further down the pipeline and say, well, what are we doing to prepare people to be operating at deputy director level, ready to apply and step up to director level posts. So it's work in progress. You'll see it's improving, but it you know, if we are to achieve our target in the next 2 years, there's a big jump required.
Okay, so I think we've had a reasonable discussion about finance, performance, general direction in terms of some of those key performance indicators. People happy just, you know, from as a board perspective, obviously you're invited to receive these papers. Do people feel content and assured in terms of the information that's been shared, the direction of travel? Good. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody presenting and the richness of that information that was shared. So we now move on to Barry's last report as chair of the audit committee.
There we go, make the most of it. The report, as previously, is designed to just bring to the board's attention the key aspects covered within the last audit committee meeting. That is against a backdrop of both a rigorous annual planning process to determine what the audit committee needs to do to ensure completeness. It also is substantially fueled by the internal audit planning process and determining which aspects of the trust are most worthy of internal audit scrutiny at a particular point in time. So the report is designed to stand by itself. I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have there.
Okay, thank you. So have we got any questions for Marion? No, sorry, just asking more questions. That's me. No, okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for your report as always. And we're now moving on to some governance items, which I think should be relatively quick. So the first item is from Karen, which I did ask her whether we meant to approve this. But I think we're supposed to support it in a context that somebody else has approved it somewhere else, aren't we?
Yes, and I was just going to say this is probably one of the items I've got a conflict of interest in, but soon as I'm presenting it, it's very hard to step out.
Yeah.
So this shouldn't be a surprise. When we agreed the year arrangements for the distributed leadership model, which was the 3-way split for the chief nurse at Bradford ICB, we said we would review after 6 months. For openness and transparency, I've included those papers of that review. It will be true to say it's a bit like Marmite, but we did ask people the question in the middle of the operating model discussions, which was the worst possible time to ask anybody. But actually there's some real positives in there as well. So this went to the Partnership Leadership Executive, where it was agreed to continue and support this, but to provide consistency, instead of saying, yes, we agree, carry on for the other 6 months, it will be an extension at 12 months at a time with a 6-month review.
Yeah, okay. So it's fairly self-explanatory. I did love the comment about wear a lipstick at all times.
Yes.
Just to show that I've read this report, it's not quite exactly. But so, you got a question? Yeah?
No, it's a typo, which is almost as amusing at that point, which is, it says that overall moral was poor at this time.
Oh, right.
No one Karen and Amanda, you know, what to do. I suspect it's morale.
Yeah. Well spotted. Any questions for Karen? Are we happy to continue to support this arrangement?
Yeah.
With its morals and its red lipstick?
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've then got, some constitution amendments from, is this you, Laura, or Mel?
I think I'll take it. Following the retirement of John Holden, previously Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Strategy and Partnerships, that post was a designated voting member of the board. I'm proposing that we take the opportunity just to ask ourselves the question in acknowledging the appointment of 3 new directors. There is the opportunity to redesignate the voting part of that appointment to another role if we felt that was appropriate. Would be easy just to roll it over into the Director of Strategy and as you will be aware, we rarely vote on things. I'm not entirely sure of the major significance or otherwise of the difference between voting or non-voting members. Sometimes people get hung up about it. In practice, in my experience, it's never been that much of an issue, but it is a constitutional requirement to designate an other voting member amongst the executives. And the question is, would we prefer that to be Director of Strategy and Transformation or People and Purpose? I would suggest not necessarily the Estates and Facilities post. That would be unusual, but any strong preferences or how to take my recommendation.
So I guess it's to carry on as we are, or is there any reason to change it to the general? Does anybody have any strong views? No? So in the absence of strong views, you carry on as we are.
Transformation, yeah.
Like you say, it's unusual for the vote to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, people are content with that?
Yeah, just to say that because it's a constitution amendment, we'll need to take this to council governors as well, as well as to,
Okay.
It's not a change, so there should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right, thank you. Well reminded, Laura, thank you very much. And then the last item on this section is the sign off of the academy work plan. So as I understand it, the academies have all gone through their own reviews, they've all developed their own work plans, and this comes to us now just for sign off. Is there anybody not prepared to sign off the work plans for the academies as presented? No? Thank you very much. We approve those then. So do we have any other business that is part of the agenda? No? Is there any issue to refer to the board committees or academies that we've not picked up as we've gone along? I'm not going to go back to the long list because we've picked things up as we've gone along and suggested things go to the exec or things get taken forward. Anything you think we didn't reference that? No? Okay. And in terms of the meeting, do people feel they've had adequate time to challenge, comment, understand the papers? Any, Julie?
I think it's better that we've had the dashboard, the finance and performance papers included in the agenda as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that's a change, but I think it's better.
Yeah, are people happy to sort of suggest we continue with that? Obviously, a new chair may well have a view about such things as I had a view about such things, but that's the only one I've shared my view on. But I guess if you're happy to carry on like that, so somebody knows.
It's better.
Good, thank you very much. And the next meeting will be on the 14th of March, and we'll also do the thing in person. And finish this minute, it's 12:29. I'm even surprised myself. I'm even surprised myself with that. But thank you very much. So we've got a lunch, half an hour, and we're then going to join a session, just a half an hour session with Jagtar Singh, who's just going to talk to us about some work that they may do with us, and then we move into our private session at 1:30. I think I've got that timing right. Yeah, at 1:30. Okay, so thank you.